Hey y'all, I'm Kiara Sheree,
And I'm Ray.
and welcome to Yes Black Girl.
Hey, y'all.
Right. So, how was your Thanksgiving, Rhea?
It was very relaxing, kind of. I mean, I was kind of annoyed the whole day. For womanly reasons,
Okay,
and the food was really good. I made mac and cheese, and what else
of
did we make?
course.
We made a lot of stuff. We made Thanksgiving food.
Right.
Blank right now. But yeah, how are you?
I'm good. I also had a really good Thanksgiving. I feel like we were all super full. We were all so full that we could barely like even interact and do the games and everything that we were supposed to be playing. But it was full of joy, kids running around and everybody catching up, and that was really, really nice. So I'm just really happy to be home and visiting with everybody.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was nice to see family, and we watched King Richard, so that was good.
that
We
was
don't.
such a good film. Did you
Yeah,
cry?
did I? No, I
I think I almost cried a few times, but I did get teared up like once. But that movie had me. It was just an incredible film.
Yeah, it was emotional. But
It was.
I don't normally cry in movies. So
Oh, okay. I'm a crier.
yeah.
I stay crying. All right. So let's go ahead and get into our guests for today. We've had so many incredible guests grace us on this platform, and we're extremely thankful for that. And today that is going to be continued. So let's get into this bio because I don't think they really know what's
Fire.
going on today.
This
Okay,
is
it's
fire.
bio. Listen. All right. So, Wendy L. Wilson is an award winning journalist and content creator with 20 years of professional editorial experience, and she is currently the executive editor at BT.com. Wendy is the former managing editor at thegrio.com and the former managing editor at both Ebony and Jet magazines, and the former news editor at Essence.com and Essence Magazine. This makes Wendy the only journalist to date who has worked on staff at the three of the most prestigious African American national media outlets in the country. Y'all heard that? Okay.
Young lit.
Listen, while at Essence, Wendy also oversaw the news section, which included the inception of Essence's first Washington, D.C. correspondent and developing a relationship with the White House Press Corps, as well as the editorial internship program where she hired, trained, and mentored several young journalists who are now thriving in the industry. Throughout her career, Wendy has reported and produced several high profile interviews with politicians, heads of state, and celebrities, including former President of Liberia, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, former First Lady, excuse me, of the United States, Michelle Obama, and media icon Oprah Winfrey. And yet, the stories that she feels are the most poignant are those that involve ordinary people overcoming extraordinary circumstances. Wendy is a graduate of New York University, where she received a master's degree in journalism, and a graduate of Skidmore College, where she received a bachelor's degree in English. She is the former chair of diversity and inclusion for Skidmore's alumni board, and in 2018 became an adjunct professor at the Newhouse School of Communications at Syracuse University, teaching a course on race and gender in the media. Wendy has freelanced for various outlets, including the NAACP's The Crisis Magazine, Family Circle, Scholastic, Essence, WebMD.com, Push Black, and Brass City Media. So, without further ado, let's welcome Wendy L. Wilson.
Oh,
Woo!
that's amazing.
Welcome.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate the very, very elaborate introduction.
Listen, I feel like every single part of that needed to be known. We are
Thank you.
incredibly happy to have you on today. Thank you for coming on, and your entire resume is just outstanding. So
Thank you.
we had to let people know who you are and what you've done in this world. Okay.
It's weird to hear it because when you're in it and you're in the thick of things, it's your job
Mhm.
and you're just
Yes,
doing your job. So, it's kind of weird to hear it back. But thank you very much. I appreciate the
of
reception, and I'm
course.
so, so very happy to be here today with you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, so we're going to get into some this or that questions, and I'll go ahead and start it off. So the first one is print journalism or digital journalism?
Oh, wow. You're starting out with the hard ones already. Ah, well, I would say digital journalism, and since that's the area that I'm currently in, although there are times, I was just talking to a friend of mine last week where I saw the recent covers of Essence, and
Mhm.
they're so gorgeous. And
Yes.
I just was like, oh, I miss the process of being able to labor over a piece of love like that.
Mm,
Sometimes I do miss the actual the actual work that it takes to people really do not know how hard it is to put a magazine out every month. And so just everything from the photography to the cover lines to the ideation around the stories that people feel that are really going to impact the reader.
mm,
So I do miss that sometimes, but there is a certain immediate gratification that one gets with digital journalism.
absolutely. I feel
Mhm.
that.
It's funny you say that because I have like this magazine cover that I made in
I peeped that.
in
I
my
peeped that.
my what's it called, my
Is it your
design.
mood?
Yes, my design class at
Oh,
Booth.
okay.
And it took so long to do the cover.
Yes.
Like,
Mm,
it's so
Yes.
many like specificities that people go over just for the cover. So I
mm,
The cover is your front door, right? And
yes.
even if your house is messy, you got to let your front door look really good to invite
To bring
people
people
in,
in.
yes.
right?
Mhm.
So the front door is everything. The cover is everything, and it's a labor of love for any publication. It doesn't matter what the publication is. The cover is always a labor of love.
Mm,
Even like with the font, it had to be very
Font,
specific.
placement of the words,
Mhm.
repetition of words, the specificity of the words, the color palette,
Mhm.
the
mm.
design of the subject matter. Do you want to do something that's full face, back, kind of a stretched back? Do you want background of it's a lot. It's a
Mhm,
lot.
mhm.
But it takes a team, and
Yes.
usually people get it right. So
Yes, they do.
mhm.
They definitely do.
So,
They understand.
so the next one is Ebony Magazine or Essence Magazine.
Oh goodness.
Right.
Oh goodness. You got to get me in trouble with this. um, wow. You know, I can't choose between the two. I would say that both had, amazing experiences and
Mhm.
taught me a lot while I was at both publications. Essence is, of course, the venerable, outlet for Black women, staple in so many of our lives, not just
Yes.
households, but lives,
Yes.
right? It became we used to call it the Black Women's Bible. It really
Mhm.
was that important, and is that important for many in the community. And Ebony is that is sort of Ebony started out as the Life magazine for our community when Life magazine wasn't back in the 50s, wasn't speaking to us, wasn't incorporating our stories. Mr. Johnson started that publication as a way for us to see each other and
Yes.
celebrate the things that we knew were important to the
Mhm.
community, important to us. So both of them were celebrations of Black life, Black culture, Black diaspora. I could never choose.
Choose
Sorry.
between the two. I feel the same way. I
Yeah.
wanted to see
Yeah,
what you were gonna say, but
yeah,
I
yeah,
feel the
yeah,
same.
yeah.
Incredible. All right. So the 80s or the 90s?
Oh gosh, 80s or 90s. I'm gonna say 90s,
Okay.
because I was still a kid in the 80s. So 90s is when I went to college and, had, in my opinion, I'm going to say it, I'll go on the record as saying it, the best time of music ever.
Yes.
90s hip hop and R&B is still being played very widely today, which says something.
Mhm.
But I think that for me, my college experience was one that was really pivotal.
Yes.
It was a time of discovery, what college should be, time of
Mm,
discovery, a time of making lifelong friends, a time of finding oneself, I didn't have the luxury to go past my 4 years. I had to do what I had to do in 4 years because I was on that financial aid. So, so keeping it real, didn't have any help there. Had to take my loans and work my way to make that happen. Very proudly saying that. And you know, I took college very seriously. I was one of those kids that got into college and knew what I wanted to do. Skidmore at the time did not have a journalism program, but I knew I wanted to be at Skidmore. So I had to figure out how to make this this thing called journalism that I thought I knew what it was, how to make it work for me at a place that I wasn't necessarily maybe getting that instruction. So I did a bunch of internships. I worked at the student writing lab. I ended up doing some newsletters on campus. I found ways to develop my craft, even if it wasn't in the classroom. That's so awesome. You know, I think that if ultimately Skidmore is always going to be a place where students have the ability to develop their skills in other ways, non-traditional ways, whether that be outside of the classroom or through international travel or working within the community. There are other opportunities that one can develop for oneself if one has the enterprising mindset to do so.
I love these answers. And this is still this or that. That's wow. But I can relate. So the next one, New York or Jamaica?
Oh wow. Geez, these are hard. New York or Jamaica? Gosh, I don't think I can choose between those either. Let's see. Born and bred in New York, born and bred in the Bronx specifically, but a first generation American. My family came here in the 70s. My parents came here in the 70s. They met here in New York. And so I always tell people I have no roots in this country. I don't have grandparents that came from here. I don't have uncles or aunts that came from here. Everybody came from Jamaica. So my identity is a little bit confused, I guess. It's the best way to explain it. As a first generation West Indian American, anybody who folds into that little bucket will understand what I'm saying. Or even if you're, you know, African from an African nation or any other part of the Caribbean, you get it. Being black from the Caribbean and being black from the Caribbean and female. Those are identifiers that have heavy weights on them. But typically we are raised differently. We have different ideologies, somewhat conservative, usually Christian based, those type of things. Culturally, like Thanksgiving was yesterday. We don't really do Thanksgiving. It's not a thing in the Caribbean, right? We've adapted because we're here, but it's not really a big deal for us. You know, there are other, I think Christmas is a bigger holiday because of the Christian component to it. So it's hard for me to choose because New York is my base. It's always going to be home. I've lived other places. I always come back here. There is a certain je ne sais quoi that New Yorkers have, right?
I love that phrase. That's my favorite phrase.
It's sort of hard to describe unless you're from here. You know, it's just a certain thing. People have their ideas on what New Yorkers are like. It's usually wrong. We're not as hardcore as people make us out to be, but you know, you put us to task and you get a little taste, that sort of thing. And then the Caribbean, specifically Jamaica, that's the ancestors. The ancestors are there. Every one of my ancestors are there. So it's hard for me it's impossible for me to choose. You know, both of them speak to me so strongly.
I definitely understand that. And I love what you were saying about the difference between a Thanksgiving and a Christmas. I have a friend whose mom is like obsessed. They're Jamaican and she's obsessed with Christmas. That's like her favorite. Her tree is already up. She's singing the Christmas songs, like, and she has the wreath on the door. So I
it.
get
But
that.
Thanksgiving
Yes.
is like, yeah.
We got some food. It's
That's my
here. It's
food.
here.
Exactly.
All right. So since I actually missed the last one, this last question is living single or Sex in the City?
Oh, living single. That's easy. I didn't even think about that one.
Okay. Love it, love it,
Yeah,
love it.
I'm not. Yeah, living single. I don't even have to explain that one.
That's beautiful. I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, which one? I was trying to figure out what could go up against Living Single, and I didn't want to do Friends. I chose Living Single and Sex in the City because, of course, Carrie being a journalist, and we having Khadijah over here running an entire, empire. And I'm like, I
Exactly,
wonder which one.
exactly.
But yes,
You
yes.
know what probably would have been hard? It would be a different world
Yeah.
between that
Tell
and
me
living single because,
why.
well, because watching a different world when I was growing up, I saw the dynamic of not only college life, but what really spoke to me, weirdly enough, and I'm one of those weird people that I diverge a lot on
Mm-hmm.
things that you think are straight line. I'm usually crooked to the side. But Whitley being a head resident in the dorm, I ended up being a
Yes.
resident in the dorm. Mainly because
Oh
I saw it on television and I saw how she developed a communal atmosphere,
wow.
really allowing the people in her space to know that she was there for them, that she was a sounding board for them. And I ended up really kind of going through, I was an RA first and then became head resident of one of the dorms on campus. It allowed me not only financially help, it was helpful, but
Mm-hmm.
it really allowed me to develop my leadership skills, to be accountable for other
Mm.
people because I was in
Yes.
charge of all the other students in the dorm,
Right.
and to really just have a sense of camaraderie
Mm-hmm.
within my my staff, my floors, making sure that people were safe. Kind of having that non-judgmental mindset when I remember dealing with a young lady who had overdosed,
Mm.
and trying to bring her to health services. I physically carried her to health services,
Wow.
and just being there for people who needed that help. I saw that first on A Different World.
I've never heard anyone explain
Totally different.
that's yes, that's never been like it's always, they encourage me to go to an HBCU
Right,
or to
right,
join
right.
Greek life, but that is
Nope.
incredible. I love that.
Yep.
I love
And
that
not
for you.
a lot of people talk about their RA because we're considered the narcs, right? The police of the, but at the same time, if you need help, who you go call?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We had some good RAs and some weird ones at Bowie
Yes,
State.
yes, yes. There's
Respectfully.
always the weird one. There's always a weird
Yes.
one.
But
But at the end
yeah,
of the day, if you're in trouble, if you need something fixed, or
that's who you're going
who do
to.
you call?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're
Yep.
RA.
Or if you just
So
need somebody to lean on, your mama's
there you
not
go.
there. It's
There
like you
you
do have
go.
your RAs and
Yeah.
sometimes the resident
Yeah.
directors as well, if you got a good one.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yep. Okay, so we're gonna get into the actual interview now.
Okay.
So tell us, when did you know that you wanted to become a journalist?
I would probably say sometime around maybe my senior year of high school.
Mm,
Um, I knew that I was always one of those students who, in high school specifically, if the professor or the teacher said, um, you have a paper to write and the paper's 5 pages long, I would end up giving 6 or 7, because writing was always very a comfortable medium for me to
mm,
communicate. I was never a kind of loquacious child or talkative. I did a lot of my communicating through writing because I just found it easier. And I love words. I love the power of words. I love
mm,
that words can have the power to give you emotion, make you
mm.
happy, or make you sad, or make you angry. That is
Absolutely.
an incredible power that one can possess. And
Mm-hmm.
so I also value what a journalist does: purveyor of information, communicator, um, someone who's the conduit, the link between one to the other.
Yes.
And so in that thinking, my parents, as I said before, are immigrants to this country. I didn't have anybody in the industry that could help me get in. And I didn't know what a journalist really did other than what you saw on television for the 6 o'clock news.
Right.
But I grew up watching the news with my parents. I grew up with my dad buying the newspaper every day. I grew up reading magazines all the time. Like, for me, one of the Christmas gifts that I always asked for were subscriptions to
Oh
magazines.
wow.
So I love just, at the time there was a teen magazine called Sassy. Back in the day. That was one of my favorites, but I also, Write On and Word Up were the two sort of black,
Throwback.
entertainment magazines that I would
Yes.
buy if I had money to buy them. I was never really into like the 17s and whatnot because, of course, not seeing myself in those
Right.
publications, but
Yes.
would always read Essence and literally say to myself, one day,
Yeah.
one day, maybe. Same thing with Ebony. My aunt had a subscription to both Essence and Ebony, so every time I went over to her house, I was just devouring those
Mm.
magazines. And people would see that, and so my aunt got me a subscription to Reader's Digest. And I would, again, just a kid who read a lot, and so I would read Reader's Digest and those short stories. What when people don't often understand is when you read, you also learn the words, right? So as
Yes.
I'm reading and I'm seeing words and I'm like, what does that mean? I look it up. And back
Yeah.
then, no internet. So
The
one of the things
dictionary.
dictionary. And one of the things my parents, amazing insight, can't believe the insight that they had, not having formal education themselves, formal higher education themselves, bought me encyclopedias.
Mm.
And so I had a set of encyclopedias in the house. So anytime there was something that I was curious about or didn't know or didn't understand, I'd just look it up and
That's
had that at
awesome.
the ready. I didn't have to go to a library for it. I didn't have to, it was like my
Right.
own internet was in the house.
Yes.
So having those things, I think, just developed my curiosity also. Very curious person, always asking the questions that I don't feel were always answered. So, for instance, I
Same.
grew up in high school watching Arsenio Hall all the time, and seeing that interview format also
Mhm.
developed that interest because I would watch Arsenio and Arsenio ask these celebrity questions, but then I often felt like, well, I wanted to know this and I wanted
Right.
to know that. And so, didn't feel fulfilled always from that.
Mhm.
So all of those things kind of came together and manifested um, into this need and desire to do this job.
That's awesome. Wow. Come on, origin story. I love that. I definitely had some similar things going on in my childhood. A
Mhm,
lot of books were around, a huge
mhm.
bookshelf. My mom always made sure that I had books, and my grandma always made sure that I had a diary. That was like her
Exactly.
thing. She was like, write down whatever you're feeling, always journal everything. And I think
Yeah.
it's super important for you for people to introduce that into
Mhm.
children's lives. You got to have
Absolutely.
that component.
Mhm.
Yeah, in my school, my elementary school, we had deer time. So it was drop everything and read for
Oh, I remember that.
20 or 30 minutes. And
Yeah.
Nice. That's excellent.
a lot.
Yep. Yeah, it's super important. I feel like I don't know if there's the same way now with the kids in elementary school, but I know they pushed it super hard when we were younger to make sure that everyone was reading and really taking things in there. And like you said, it does. It creates it makes your creativity a lot stronger and it strengthens your
Absolutely.
imagination in ways that,
Absolutely.
looking at things online, it's not the same. It just doesn't
It
hit the same
isn't.
because
It
they're
isn't.
showing you things versus you being able to come up with your own ideas.
Yes.
And yeah, I
Yes.
definitely appreciate being a 90s kid for that reason.
Yeah. And there's something about, I have a 7-year-old niece and we take her to the library and she has that feeling and that anticipation of going there and being able to
Mm,
get something new and going through the racks and feeling we've done that with her since she was very, very little. That is an experience that I think that every kid should have the luxury of having. Unfortunately, not every child does.
you're right.
But it's important, I think, to get your kid a library card. It's important to
Hmm.
take time to have reading time with your kid, develop their reading skills. So many of our Black and Brown children are below these levels
Yes.
because they don't have, in my opinion, the parental support needed, right? So
Right.
got it. Parents got to work. Parents are single. Parents are doing everything that they can do. Totally
Yeah.
understand. However, your teacher's child is not the parent.
That's right.
So once the classroom is done, then your job starts again.
Mhm.
And part of that is really encouraging these creative dynamics, whether
Yes.
that be through tactile learning, clay making, drawing, reading, singing, anything
Singing.
musical, develop those creative skills,
Yes.
and also develop the mechanical skills in the mind. Because I always
Mm.
say it's one thing to have your kid play the video games, it's another thing to have your kid develop the video game.
Yes.
Our kids
That.
aren't doing that. They're playing them a lot. They're not
Yes.
developing them. Other kids
I
are
don't
doing that.
I don't know if you guys saw it recently. There was I think it was like on TikTok or something. There was a kid who got in trouble in school because he had hacked into the school system.
Yeah.
But a part of his punishment was creating his own video game.
There you
And I
go.
thought that was incredible. And he was
That's
like an elementary
amazing.
school age child
Yes,
and a
yes,
little black boy. And I was like, this is what I love to see. This is
yes.
exactly it. Like
Funnel it
that's how you do
positively.
things. Yes.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
But didn't they call the SWAT team or something?
Oh Lord.
They did. They did.
Yeah.
We're not even gonna focus on that because thankfully, the right people were there so
Thankfully,
that it didn't have
yes,
to
and
go
it
that
worked
way.
out.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that was ridiculous for a baby. All right, let's keep it moving.
So you've had the privilege of working at some of the most prestigious Black-owned media companies. What was it like working in those environments, and did you feel supported?
It was I would say that it was different at all 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 publications I've worked at. It's been different everywhere. I think, I sort of got my bulk of my experience at Essence because I was there for so long. I think at least I was there maybe 12, 13 years. So I would say that experience sort of leans more into what I count as maybe pinnacle points in my career. Being there at a time when the country had its first Black president, and developing our White House connection, and being able to go to both the not only the Democratic National Convention but the Republican National Convention, and covering both of those at a time in the country before we experienced this class
Shift.
president.
Yes.
Name shall not be mentioned.
Yes.
It was really amazing. It was really amazing. I've been to the White House a few times under President Obama, and every time was a pleasure. It was a joy. It was a wonderful experience. And so also being able to report on, one of the things I will say, last year with the pandemic was pretty hard for a lot of Black journalists, myself included, because not the pandemic itself, but I think the George Floyd situation really did send a lot of us over the edge in ways.
Yes.
And for me, it was a different reason. And I think for a lot of Black journalists who cover news, it was a different reason. The reason being that seeing the country explode the way it did in the reaction to the George Floyd video was confusing, right? At least for me. Why? Because we have seen this over and over and over again. And when I heard of George Floyd, I was like, okay, all right, so what's this guy's name? It was
Right.
another case, right?
Exactly.
But I have been seeing these cases. I've been telling people, I've been reporting on Black death by the hands of law enforcement for 15 years. Sean Bell was the first person that I reported on whose death happened in New York as a result of the NYPD. So this was just another to me.
Right.
And so to see all of a sudden everybody was like, oh no, we're fighting for George. Why didn't you fight for Tamir? Why didn't you fight for Sean? Why didn't you fight for Sandra? Why didn't you, like, the list would go Felonious? Like what
Yes.
why all
This
of a sudden
is the
this?
thing that has everyone jumping
This
up.
is the thing that has everybody jump, because there was video
Yeah.
back with other
And we were
cases.
all
So
on social media.
why was this the thing to get allies all of a sudden so into their feelings, where you had all of a sudden companies are shutting down for Juneteenth and putting up black squares online, and isn't that amazing? But
Yes.
this isn't new for us. This isn't new for us.
Right.
And so, you know, when I think about my career overall, I think about the number of moms I've had to interview who lost their children, and the number of wives who have lost husbands, and the number of daughters who have lost fathers, and so on and so forth. And it has become hard on my soul. That's the only way I can say it. It's become hard on my soul because you're telling these stories and you want these stories to be different and poignant and important, but yet there's the same thread line over
Yep.
and over and over again. And
Yes.
so I think for me, last year was quite difficult in that regard because it actually started with the case in Dallas with the young man who died in his home as a result of the police officer who entered the wrong apartment.
Yes.
And
That was a
so
hard one.
that was a hard one because he was doing nothing but sitting in his home eating ice cream,
That could
right?
literally.
And you can't be more innocent than that. You
Yes.
cannot be more innocent than that. And so, um, you know, it just became, I think, overwhelming for a lot of us. And yet we are the ones to tell these stories, because if we don't tell them from an authentic point of view, then no one really truly understands, right? You
That's
don't
right.
understand the pain of talking to the loved ones who lost their children. You don't understand that pain until it's told through someone who can understand that pain. When the loss is so egregious, particularly. So it's hard to say. I did this type of reporting at Essence. I started it there. I continued it. I mean, Mike Brown was when I was at Ebony, when Ferguson happened and all of that, you know, fell apart, and we did reporting there. You know, came to BET, and here, you know, I thought we will just be doing election coverage, and
Breonna
you know,
Taylor
being
happens.
Breonna Taylor happened, George Floyd happened, it just Ahmaud Arbery happened. And so
Yes.
we continue to tell these stories because we have to. Because
Yes.
if we don't, again, they get lost in the shuffle. They are not told authentically. You don't understand the pain. You don't understand the triumph, as was the case a couple of days ago with the Ahmaud Arbery decision and that murder trial. These are things that have to be told through Black media in order
Yes.
for people to truly understand the modicum of, like I said, emotion that comes through that. Yes, someone who is of color at a mainstream publication can say it, can interpret these feelings, but the consistency is not
Yeah.
always there. We're going to stay with the story from beginning to end, you know,
Yes.
and we're going to ensure that our audience, our community, is fully aware of all gamuts of the type of stories that I think people just really want to know.
Yes. I agree 100%. It's funny because when I was on my way home the other day coming to Maryland, I had an Uber driver who was asking me. He was saying he couldn't understand. This was an older Black gentleman. He couldn't understand why the family was celebrating
Mm-hmm.
the verdict, and I was just like, "What?" Do you, like I felt like he was coming from like a Christian standpoint of, you know, you're supposed to forgive and all of that, but I'm
Yeah,
like, if you had a son who was, you know, killed. He wasn't doing anything wrong. You know, how would you feel if his killers are being put
absolutely,
behind bars? Like, of course,
absolutely,
you know, the family is going
absolutely.
to celebrate. But
And
you're
it goes
absolutely
deeper
right.
than that, right? Like at times, you know, no one truly, unless you're the part of the family, you really don't truly understand, right? But
Yes.
I think you look at these things and you have to think to yourself, vindication for all the ones that didn't get their vindication,
Yes. Yes.
right? So when
Because
I
this was
saw
a
the
kid.
verdict on, you know, last week, I'm thinking to myself also, um, you know, just all the other young men who died so mercilessly and just,
Mm.
you know, horribly. Um, Emmett Till comes to mind,
Oh,
um, of just, you know, all white jury, got off. All those men eventually admitted in the Emmett
Just to
Till
tell their story
situation,
later, right?
so just to tell the story later, and got off scot-free. Well, not anymore. That's
Right.
what we're saying.
Thank
Not anymore.
finally.
Justice prevails, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that the family was feeling not only the weight of Ahmaud, but the weight of the other victims
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
who didn't have justice.
absolutely. I agree with that. Mm. Ooh, I'm sorry. I'm just
Yeah.
No, I
I
know, I
always get
know,
emotional.
I know. It's
Yeah,
tough. This is tough
it
stuff,
is.
you know.
It really,
And
really is.
I think for me, the last person, the last mother I interviewed was Breonna Taylor's mom,
Mm.
and it's hard. It's hard because one of the first questions I always ask is, tell me about Brianna, or tell me about your daughter. What's something
Mhm.
that you miss? What's something that, you can say that people don't know? We want to know who she was. We've heard all the things about, I'm going to take this out because it's falling out. We've heard all the things about, the facts of the
Mm.
case, but
Yes.
who was she as a person? And
Right.
I remember her telling me that, yeah, she was an EMT, right? But she
Mhm.
wanted to be a nurse, and
Mm.
she was studying to get to that point. She just loved helping people, and that's
Yes.
something again that I think gets lost when you think about these names and these faces, and people are
These
putting them through
hashtags.
social media, and they're doing the marches. You forget about the
The
human being,
human.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and that's what I think we as journalists should be purporting. We should be exposing who the human being was in these
Yeah.
situations, so that people remember this is, yes, there's a case, yes, this is a bigger thing, but this is a human being who was
Yes.
lost, and here's a reminder of who that person was.
Right. And I feel like I agree. That's always lost. And that's what I do appreciate about Black journalism. I feel like is you guys always make it a point to
Mm-hmm.
humanize the victims or even survivors. If we're talking about people who have survived something,
Exactly.
you always make sure to
Exactly.
humanize them. And I feel like a lot of people are able to spew the hate and to see things differently because they aren't getting that aspect just looking at the news. It's
That's
always,
right.
just shown as a subject or something, so much bigger.
The humanization process with that, I feel like that was the first time I saw it in that case
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
because of like social media, and I would see like different pictures of Brianna like at a
Mm-hmm.
party or at church or wherever, and I'm like, she
Mm-hmm.
reminds me of my cousins.
Yes.
Mhm.
That really
Yeah.
hit me in the
Yeah.
heart.
Yes. Absolutely. Mm.
Mm.
Let's take a moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
some breaths.
Yes.
Whew. Okay. Um, so have you ever been the only Black woman in a room for a job? And if you were, how did you navigate those spaces
Going out for a job or within the job itself?
within the job itself? Or both, actually. I'd love to hear both.
Yeah. Well, because I went to a predominantly white university or college, I'm used to that space. It's not an
Mm-hmm.
unfamiliar space to me. It's a space that, quite frankly, I'm okay navigating. I think that white folks don't always understand that whenever we're the only, we immediately get into a room and we clock. Right? We
Yes.
talk to see who else is familiar.
Yes.
When we don't, we internalize that. They don't have to
Mm-hmm.
do that. Nice, but we do, and we
Yeah.
often do, particularly Black women. So yes, being the only, particularly I would say when, having worked at majority Black outlets, I've been lucky that I've been in spaces where those spaces have been comfortable because there are other people of color in those spaces.
Mm.
Uh, but when I went to cover the DNC and RNC for
Mm.
Essence, it was part of a bigger project that the company as a whole, our corporate company at the time, Time Inc., was sending different people from different outlets. So I went
Mm.
with a group of reporters, one from Time Magazine, one from People Magazine, one from Essence, one from, right? And so we were sort of a collective, that went to the RNC and DNC. And so, yeah, I was the only Black person in the group who was
Wow.
there. And I distinctly remember being a part of that press pool at the DNC, and with reporters, really kind of high level reporters from Time magazine, Time.com, and People, and these are big mainstream outlets. And we're all, kind of like, hey, yeah, but not taking Essence seriously because we're a women's publication,
Yes.
or they just don't know what Essence is, believe it or not. A lot of
Yeah.
people who are not people of color just don't know what Essence is.
Right.
And so we're all in our pool, and I just remember working my contacts and getting that interview with Mrs. Obama and saying to the group, because I had to do this interview, we were all sort of in a pool area at the DNC audit. It was a stadium or auditorium, I can't remember, but I had to go back to the hotel to do this interview online with her. And I said, guys, I have to go back to the hotel. I'm going to interview Mrs. Obama. And the faces were just like, how'd you get that?
Because I'm that girl.
Not just that, but don't underestimate us.
Yes.
Don't ever underestimate us. We're always thought of as not being able to. And I like to be that sort of silent assassin where I'm just like, thanks.
Right.
Right?
I got this.
Because
Right.
having worked at Essence, having worked at Ebony, having worked at Jet Degree at BET, even with that resume, there are still white folks who will look at my resume and say, right? Because they don't understand what these outlets have meant to our community.
Yes.
And me going into a space having to explain that all the time is interesting. But I'm all about education. I'm all about information. I'm all about empowerment. I'm all about, just enlightening people. And I don't mind doing it. I've been doing it since I was in college. So it's kind of what I'm here to do. So being in those spaces, I'm not uncomfortable. I always say that this is a nuance. Like, you have to be very smart in how you navigate these things, but go into a space very confident that you know your business.
Yes.
Make sure you do know your business, right? You can't fake it, but go into the space knowing that you know your business. Like, I went into those spaces with those other outlets with people who had clearly had more experience than me, yes, but I knew I had this connection to the White House.
Yes.
I knew that this thing that I was working on the side was coming to me. So I just kept it close to the vest, and at the right time informed the group that, guess what? I belong here too.
Yes.
Right? I belong in this space. I've worked hard as well. And you don't always have to say that. I think sometimes in your actions, that's all you need. It's not always so I don't believe in being the loudest voice in the room. In fact, I'm turned off by that. I prefer someone being, I have the most clicks, or I have someone quoting my story, or my story got picked up X, Y, and Z. That tells me you're a boss.
Yes, you're letting the work speak for you.
Let the work speak for you. You being loud and obnoxious, anybody can do that.
That's right.
What's special about that? What's special about that? In fact, like I said, it's a turnoff. What to me is, let your work speak for itself. That shines brighter and it gets more attention from folks who you don't always realize are watching.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Jim.
Yeah.
I'm definitely taking that with me. Yes.
Oh yeah, it's my turn. Sorry. So we live in a social media driven world. How do you feel about journalism changing over the course of your 20-year career, especially with digital spaces like Twitter, Instagram, determining which stories get told so often? Because I've noticed that, like, on Twitter, conversations are constantly like being repeated. It's just like an echo chamber.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's weird, because I often tell people I don't even know what a journalist is in 2021, 2022. And that's why a lot of us are calling, and you mentioned as well, calling ourselves content creators, because journalism has become this almost like an outlaw, area of just anybody and everybody thinks that they can do this thing called journalism. And some people who, haven't studied it have done quite well at it, right? But I think what's always missing is the foundation. What's
Yes.
always missing is the foundation. And so social media allows for everybody to have an opinion, whether they are expert at it or not. And so you have to take social media with a grain of salt. If you take it as Bible, as you take it as doctrine, you will end up becoming a very confused and informed person, in my opinion, even because there's so much information coming at you.
Yes.
The everyday person doesn't have the ability to discern information. And I know
Right.
that may sound a little bit, but it's true. You have, if you hear that, oh gosh, I don't know, some celebrity is, suddenly found to have, a bunch of drugs on them, and you are like spreading that information at will because you saw it on some blog, and not
Right.
realizing that maybe this photo that you saw is actually part of a movie.
Yes.
But
Yep.
then what, right?
Get ready for a role.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
people
people
can
just run with stuff, and they
Yes.
will always take the time to do the digging for the
The
facts,
research. Yes.
the
Say
research for the
it.
And
Yes.
so that's why I think, like, leave it to the experts, leave it to the people who actually know what we're doing, leave it to the people who can tell you the truth. Don't always go to these blogs and take it as truth. Just think things through. I always tell people, you see it on BET, go to another place and read it as well.
Yeah.
Get information from different places so that you
Yes.
can make up your own mind. One of the reasons why Fox News and MSNBC, quite frankly, are doing so well is because people watch it to really make themselves feel better about their own opinions, whether left or right. Right?
Yes.
It tends to be that more even keel, and they're a little struggling
Yeah.
with that a bit. But I think that the other two do well because people want to feel like, oh yeah, that's right, I knew I was right. Gotta get on.
Yes.
People have to get out of that. People have to start thinking, all right, I know that I think this way, but let me look at what the other side is saying. Let me
Right.
look at what this side is saying. Let me see what this person is saying.
Be more
Then make up your
well-rounded.
own. We can do more well. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like we don't have right now.
I
And
agree.
that social media has been a great unifier in a lot of ways. It's been a great way to get people information quickly, right?
Yes.
Imagine if we had social media in the days when slavery was ended. You had people
Woo!
who are still 2-3 years later, we're still like, feeding massa. So
Right.
social media is great in terms of getting the information out there quickly. What it isn't great on is making sure that information is factual, and making sure that information is accurate, making sure that information isn't hurtful, making sure that information isn't going to end up, being more detrimental to someone than it could have.
Yeah.
We don't have enough guardrails in
I
place,
agree.
in my opinion. Too many kids are reliant upon social media for their daily dose of information. And as a result, you also, I think, have to do digital. We call it like digital detox. Making sure you stay off of some of these outlets, because otherwise it just becomes so overwhelming with the imagery. You wonder why the innocence is lost nowadays, where you have kids who aren't kids anymore.
Yeah.
It's
It hurts
really
my
because
heart.
they're seeing so much imagery on social media. They're seeing so many pictures, videos, words that take away that innocence.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's important, if there aren't guardrails in place, and again, parents or you have to have your own guardrails, and give yourself that break at times. So I think it's a great tool for journalists as well,
Yeah.
right? Twitter is a great tool to reach out to people and connect with people really quickly. Instagram is a great tool to be able to see people in the moment and experience and see experiences. Great tools to use to tell our stories. But I think you just have to be very cognitive of the people you follow and the information that they're giving out.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that a lot of people rely on like confirmation bias to make whatever they're putting out make sense because they agree with it instead of doing like the full research, like you said.
Yeah. And also, something I've been noticing lately, especially if I get on Facebook, Facebook is a totally different place, a digital space. But just those fake stories that you see from blogs or even like a fake blog, and people literally take it, right away. And I see so many people on my timeline like, discussing these things, and I'm like, y'all don't even realize that this isn't real. This isn't even like a real thing. And they don't get it. And I agree, you have to do. I hop on Google right away and try to figure out what everything is. I look up, I'm like, I don't know if I want to take this. So yeah, it's important to do that.
It's important, really important.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are not that good at doing research. Like they kind of just do their Googles and then they see the first 3 results and they're like, yeah,
right.
That's it. Yeah.
Multiple tabs.
From an algorithm standpoint, they don't even realize how these things work.
It's
really.
deep.
It is very deep. It is very deep. So you do have to sort of click around to get the best pieces of information for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So going back to social media again, what was it like for you navigating and adapting to living in a social media driven world? And as a journalist, was there a specific moment that you realized that things had changed or things were different?
Yeah, I think the moment I realized things were different and had changed is when I started to see journalists about 10 years ago, one particular journalist who I won't mention, but who said something on Twitter and got suspended. Wow. And that is sort of like, that was a wake-up call for a lot of us. Because we realized that it's a platform that people are watching. It's a platform where even though his opinion was his opinion, he was tied to a certain outlet and a very well-known media outlet. And at the end of the day, you represent that outlet, no matter what, and yes, he ended up getting suspended. But it made us all sort of like really aware that you have to be very careful with what you say and put out there. So for me, even though I know that social media is super important, I'm very careful with what I share. I usually don't share a lot about my personal life because there has to be a part of life that is for you. I'm not a celebrity. I think that's different for celebrities. Personally, I feel like if you want me to watch your movie, I should know about everything about you. Yes. And what? I know that they disagree. So you do want me to go see this movie, right? You do want me to pick up this album, right? And for you to have conditions on that, I think is kind of weird. Do I need to know everything? No. But I don't like celebrities who are like, no, I don't wish to discuss that part of my life. And I don't wish to depart with this $13.99 for this streaming.
Why should I listen to it? Give a little something.
Like you have to give a little something to get a little something. So, I think that social media for journalists have become a tool for us. But you won't. I mean, some people do share quite a lot about their lives, and they feel that they need to in order to stay in the zeitgeist and stay relevant. I like to think of myself as just the conduit. I'm not a part of the news. I am the purveyor of the news. I'm the person who gives you the news. I'm the connective tissue, nothing more. Those journalists who feel the need to make themselves the news. There are plenty of them, and more power to them. But to me, you're taking away from the craft itself. You're taking away because then you become the celebrity, and it just waters down what we are supposed to be.
The message gets lost.
The message gets lost because then it becomes about you. Who cares? Who cares, quite frankly? That's one of the things I used to always say is I don't read blogs because blogs are people's personal journals. I don't really care what you have to say about X, Y. I don't care. I care about that other person's story that is, so poignant, so important, so necessary. But if you are talking about, well, I ate a can of tuna fish yesterday and and this is your day, I do not care. So blogs for me have always been sort of like eye roll. They've become more and more important, particularly, as social media has infused its way into storytelling. So, and they've become successful again because there isn't that discerning spirit.
Yeah.
But I think that people really do have to think carefully about the information that they receive, where it comes from, how they're receiving it, why they're receiving it. And what they also don't realize with celebrity journalism, a lot of these celebrities feel some kind of way because this has been exposed, that has been exposed, when 9 times out of 10, they're the ones who are giving the information to us.
Yes, they are exposed because you don't have to do that as a celebrity. Like when you think about, there's so many people who live their lives, you don't know what's going on with them at all.
That's
and they
right.
tell us what they want to tell us.
That's
and a lot of times if we're hearing something bad, it's because you've exposed yourself or you've given us this thing and now you're upset everyone's talking about it, but
and now you're
you
upset
put it out there to be
everybody's
talked about. So let's talk about it.
Let's talk
Yeah, I
about
feel
it.
the same way. I also feel like I know one of the things that we were taught as broadcast journalists, going through undergrad, was that journalism, you're supposed to stay like unbiased. You're not supposed to give your opinion. And I kind of feel like that's starting to change a little bit, especially in broadcast journalism. I feel like that's changed. How do you feel about that?
It is changing. It is changing. And like I said, you have those venerable outlets like a MSNBC or a Fox News that are becoming more successful because people are finding opinions that are in alignment with their own way of thinking. And that is a successful way of bringing about news and information, because people get the cosign and they feel good about the cosign, right? That straight-laced sort of, fact-based, this is what it is, that's always going to be there in the APs and the routers and, sort of those outlets. But people love to hear an opinion, and opinion pieces are doing really a lot. Those voices are getting stronger nowadays. There's a way to do opinion pieces where they are, again, based in fact, based, the ingredients are all fact-based, with the opinion then developed out of that. So there's a way to do these pieces that is smart and that is that's not going to be so ladled in egregious statements that just people are just saying stuff just to say it, right? And just to be like extra, and get go viral,
get the views.
I think you have to, these opinion based, whether they be viral moments or statements. If you look at something like The View, right, you have those women who are on there. They do a lot of research. They do a lot of prep to understand the stories that they're putting out there, and then base their opinion on those facts. That's the way
almost like a research paper.
There you go. That's the way it should be done, rather than just speaking off the cuff, and having your moment just to have your moment. So I think that type of journalism you're going to see more of as we foray in, because everybody wants to be heard. And now you have more platforms to do so, right? You've got different podcasts and different media outlets that or people are starting their own. And so you don't have to have there you go. You don't have to have the traditional platforms anymore, and that's incredible. But I think it's super important for people to do it in a way that's not going to be harmful.
There's
a responsibility.
That makes me think of I don't know if you know Nardwar. He's a entertainment journalist or like a music journalist, and like he usually like posts videos on YouTube. I don't know if he's done anything recently, but he can find people's like the street that they lived on when they were like 7 years old or something, and they're like, "How did you know that?" And then like They'll be like, "Oh, you had this nickname when you were 17 and you were living with your grandma or something."
Whoa.
Like, he's like a super sleuth.
But that's doing the research though. That's doing the
Yeah.
homework, right? That's
Mhm.
super important. And yeah, I mean, I've had interviews where people are like, "Oh, how'd you know that?" And I'm like, "Well, I did my research."
Yeah.
You know, I did an interview with Ambassador Susan Rice a couple years ago, and she had done. She was on her book tour, and she had done an interview with another outlet, and she said to me afterwards that this was a great interview, and she's like, because you did your homework, the other outlet didn't, and she felt like the questions are really surface. But you have to do. I read the book was long. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't read the whole book. The book was long, but I read a good part of it, and got really poignant moments from the book that I felt like wanted to get more deeper conversation about things. Again, she's the type of person who very straight laced, worked in the Obama administration, in national security, was seen as very like, about her business. But got to understand her as a person, her as a woman, her as a Black woman, her as a mother, the struggles that she has had in life, coming from divorced parents, um, having a son who's a Republican. These are things that we got into in our conversation, and how she sort of manages it all. So super important for people to just take the time, do a little digging, and really get to know a person beyond the press release.
Yes. Yeah.
So, to switch gears, what is an aspect of life that inspires you, and how do you connect it to your career?
An aspect of life that inspires me.
It could be anything.
It could be anything. What inspires me? People who are able to do solo travel. It's not something that I have been comfortable with, but I'm always inspired and really in awe of people who can pick up and go to the Maldives or go to Spain or go to the Greek islands or wherever the case may be, and just go by themselves or with a group of friends and just live and enjoy. I love the idea of international travel, and exploring places that we aren't always seen or heard or should be. One of the things that I did at Essence, I started a column. It's not there anymore, but I called it Women of the Diaspora. And what I wanted to do was give expats, women who have left America to live lives elsewhere in spaces that we weren't normally be seen, whether it be Czechoslovakia or Russia or China. Black women who are living and thriving and developing lives and in business and have great jobs and great family lives in these places. And really talking about everything from where they get their hair done to how they get their foods that they love.
I need to read that now. What archive can we find this in? Because
oh gosh, yeah, I think that was a good 10, 12, 15 years ago that we did that. But it was important for me to give insight into Black women who are outside of the realms of the US, to show other Black women that it's possible. And so I think that we tend to stick to the traditional vacation spots, right? We're going to, the most we do is Mexico. That's any type of exotic. But I think we should always think of like Europe and, like I said, Asia and outside of the realms of just Ghana, Tunisia and Egypt and some of these other places that Black American faces and voices aren't always seen or heard, and just explore. There's so much. You'd be surprised how many people. I find it surprising how many Black Americans do not have passports. And as being someone whose family isn't from here, I've had a passport since I was 8 months old. So for me, it's normal. but my friends, a lot of them have never left the country. And I find that interesting. So to me, international travel is just is something we should be doing more of.
Yeah.
That you become, when you see something, it becomes more normative, right? And there are a lot of places that have an idea of what we are, of who we are, and we can't dispel those ideas unless we're in those places to do so. So for me, I was a part of a group called the Experiment in International Living. It allowed me at 17 to travel to France with a group of students for the summer. So before I went to college, I spent 6 weeks with the host family, a white family who lived on a farm in northern France. They knew no English, and I was still studying French. I'd studied French in high school for 4 years, but still wasn't proficient. And I lived with them for 4 out of those 6 weeks. And that was a life-changing experience because it was also the first time that I wasn't seen as Black. I wasn't seen as Caribbean American. I was seen as La American. I was the American. And it isn't until you leave here that you kind of understand what that feels like and all the baggage that comes with that politically and all elsewise. So navigating that space was also very interesting. But I think international vacationing and living is something that everybody should, at one point in their life, have the experience to do.
Yeah, I
Yes.
agree. I feel like that's something that I know our generation specifically, but I am just seeing it a lot more, even with like my mom and her friends. Like they are making it a point to travel more, which I think is incredible. And it
Right.
is. It's a great way to open up your mind and to
That's right.
realize that just because we live one way doesn't mean that that's that's just
The
the sole
only
way.
way. Yes.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
it
interesting.
opens your heart as well to different cultures. You experience different foods.
Yes.
Something growing up in New York, we are spoiled with, right? Because you can go down the block and get one thing, you go down another block and get something else, completely
Yes.
different cultures. It's easy for us to go to a Little Italy or Chinatown or wherever and get these things, or the Caribbean place or whatever. And this city is indeed a melting pot in so many ways. We are also a segregated melting pot, which we don't talk about. That's another
Yes.
conversation altogether. But it helped, I think. I went to a high school where my 6, 7 best friends were either Black American, or I have one friend who is half Dominican, half Puerto Rican. I have another friend who's half Irish, half Puerto Rican. I have another friend who's Portuguese, and I have another friend who's half Irish, half Guyanese, and then myself. And that was our friend. So for us, it was like, again, like if I get into spaces that are so like regimented, it's weird to me, because we all learn from each other. We all learn from each other's culture. We are more amenable to understanding people, I think, because of that. And we just have a better appreciation. But I realized going to college that not everybody had that. But for us, it really was, I think, a wonderful opportunity to just learn from each other too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of videos of like solo travel because I just want to. Sometimes I just want to go.
I'm so scared
and drop everything, and then
that's the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Fear factor, but like I said, I really am inspired and appreciate the people who are just able to pick up and go. There are a couple of groups as well who I actually secretly like follow, and I just like one of these days maybe I'll do it. Who get people, just solo people together, and
My
they go as a
hairstylist
group.
is doing that right now.
Yeah, and they go as a group. So I'm always saying one of these days I'll pick up and do a trip to like. I mean, I really want to go to Greece. It's just so beautiful, right? And I've always wanted to go to Egypt. And I think about maybe 8, 9 years ago, there was a big sale where people were going to Abu Dhabi.
I remember that. Yeah.
Right, you remember that, right?
Yeah, it was like a glitch in the system or something.
Yes,
Like,
exactly. So a whole bunch of people had bought like tickets to Abu Dhabi and whatnot. So I wish I had jumped on that, but you know,
I had missed it out this much.
That's incredible. They need to do that again. Like somebody got to do something to throw it
exactly,
off so we can slide in and get those tickets.
exactly.
Yeah.
I saw something, I think it was on YouTube, and people were suggesting like you start off with like domestic flights. So like you want to take a trip to like California by yourself, and then like see the sights, or just start in your own town.
That's right.
I have a friend that's doing that at the moment. She's been like traveling to different places alone and trying out the different foods. And every time that she goes to a new place, I'm always, you know, asking her, I'm like, well, how are you feeling? Because that's my biggest thing is, and maybe not so much traveling domestically, but definitely going overseas. It's like, am I going to be safe out here by myself? But she's having like the best time. She always gives like a synopsis of everything that she did. And I'm like, you know, I think I may have to try that out.
Try this.
Yeah.
Yes. Or just find that one friend, you know, we all have a friend group where you have that friend who spends a little bit too much, and that's not the person you want to take with you. She won't ever have the money. But you find the friends who, you know, you'll have each other's backs, and you know, you'll feel comfortable, you know, having this experience yourself. I mean, I was able to do that in my 20s when, you know, we would, you know, traveling with friends in different places on vacation. I miss that, and I would like to get back to it. But now everybody's like, you know, homeowners and responsible people.
Okay, having families and children,
children and all that. So it's kind of hard for folks to you know, get an extra grand or two to do it properly. Because you know, I back in the day I could do a youth hospital. I ain't doing no youth hospital anymore. We're past that stage. But yes, you know,
yeah. I admire people who go backpacking like all around the world.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Nomads of the world.
If not 3, it has to be 4 or 5-star hotel. I'm not. I'm too old to be doing a backpack.
Even camping. I need a cabin.
Again, New York City girl. The idea of sleeping in a park. That's what it is. Sleep in a park.
Bugs. What is this, honey?
We're not doing that. The camping thing is not attractive at all. Glamping now. Glamping in a trailer. That's a little different.
Yes.
Glamping in a trailer. I did a story on glamping a couple years ago, and so that is attractive. But the actual on a campground and in a tent and bears and spiders, and no, thank you.
Yeah, no. I did it as a kid, and I'm good on that.
Also switching gears again. Can you summarize how your mentoring process works, and do you tailor it based on the mentee, or is the process like similar for everyone? So do you have like guidelines, I guess, that you follow for everyone, or is it kind of just like you get to know them and then y'all go on from there?
Yeah, I think it has to be individual to each person, you know, because everybody's different. Everybody interprets differently. Everybody learns differently. And I think that in the past, the people who have, it's never been a formal mentee mentor situation. It's just people who I have wanted to help and who I hope I have helped and given advice to, who have gone on to do really amazing things. And so for me, it is about just imparting pieces of information that I think could be helpful. It's nothing formal, right? To me, it's never a formal, well, we have to sit and talk 45 minutes about your career and what you're doing. It's really about, okay, how are you navigating these spaces? How are you being too sensitive in certain situations? Are you not being cognitive enough in other certain situations? And standing up for oneself, having confidence in oneself. I've had situations in my career where I've had people steal my ideas and literally present them in front of me. How did I navigate that? I've had situations where I had inappropriate touching. How did I navigate that? I've had situations where I felt like I was being ignored when other people got advances. How did I navigate that? So all of these things are not necessarily individual to me, right? These are things that will happen to everyone. And so all I can do is help someone else figure out how to navigate these spaces without getting flustered or um, leaving, really, because there have been sometimes where people are like, I don't want to do this. It's too hard.
Right.
But, hopefully giving folks enough information, enough advice to make them feel confident enough to go through the process, get from one side to the next. And what, how I did it may not work for them. That's why I think it really has to be about an individual conversation. And sometimes I always say, all I can do is advise. I can't tell you what to do. All I can do is do what I would do, what I, pieces of what I've seen has worked. And then it's up to you to take it.
Right. Have your own journey, be on
Your
your own
own
path.
journey. A lot of people ask me, do you think I should go to grad school for journalism? I can't answer that for you. That's an
No.
individual question. It's an expensive decision to make.
Yes.
It's a really expensive decision. Now, it's something that I did because I felt like I needed that foundation. I felt like I needed the extra instruction that I didn't get in undergrad. But if you're going to school and you're already getting a journalism degree in your undergrad, I mean, do you need the extra? It's really up to you. That extra really, literally, it helped me get my first internship. It helped me get my first job. Being in at NYU helped me make those connections because my professor knew someone who knew someone who knew someone. And I wouldn't have had that had I not gone through that program. But someone else could have already, been in those spaces without having to go through all of exactly. And then the other thing people don't always remember, and the thing that I always try to tell people is the person who you work with today could be your boss tomorrow. That's how this industry rolls. You never know who is going to advance and who knows whom, right? I've had people who have interviewed with me, but messed up in a job that my friend was their boss. And my friend says to me, nah, that chick, she don't got it. So when you interview with me, I'm looking at you like, no, I let you do it, you did it, right? I let you go through the motions because I have to make my own decision. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, do I really want to take this on? Right? Vice versa. People have worked with me who haven't, in my opinion, produced what I asked for or produced what was assigned to you. And so when somebody else says, oh, I'm thinking about hiring X, Y, and Z, and I'll say, you may not want to do that. So be very careful because a lot of us in Black media in particular, who are in certain positions, we know each other and we talk. And so you always want to, don't take on an assignment if you can't finish it. Don't take on an assignment. That's my biggest pet peeve. Don't take on an assignment if you have no intention on finishing it, because in the end, what it will be is more work for me. And so there's a couple people right now who probably were watching this who are like, why doesn't Wendy talk to me anymore?
Girl, you didn't understand the assignment. That's
you didn't understand the assignment. How you do. Because you've created an environment where I have to work harder than I already work harder, right? And so if you're doing that to your editor, it's not just me. If you're doing that to your editor, your boss, whomever, your job should be to do the assignment and make your boss's job easier. Those are the people we remember. Those are the people we want to help. Those are the people we want to develop. When you're all about the yammering and the back talk and the this is why, this is why, this is why, this is why, all I want to do is shut you down and move on to somebody who's going to do the job and do it without all of that.
Yeah.
So if anything, those are the pieces of advice that I give to the people who I help. I don't want to call it a mentor-mentee because it's just people who I feel like are serious about their business and really want to be great at this, not good, right? Because anybody could be good. It's being great at this. I don't do mediocrity. I don't do anything with mediocrity in mind. I do
Yes.
it with the idea of being great at it. And if you don't come with that same mindset, then I can't help you
Yes.
because your level isn't high enough.
Period.
Yes. Also, speaking of hard work, I remember the first time that we talked over the phone and you told me a story about two interns that you had. And I don't know, do you remember that story?
Which one?
So
Many stories.
it was about their work ethic, and I wanted you to tell that story again because one of them really wasn't trying to do the work, and the other one was staying back and doing what needed to be done.
I wonder if that was the. Trying to think what story this was. Was this the story about Michael Jackson?
Yes, I think it was that. Yep, that
All
was
right.
it.
So I had two interns at the time. This is when we were at Essence, and this is when Michael Jackson died. And we got the news. We were working at Essence.com, and because we were part of a company that also included at that time TMZ. And so TMZ had the news hours before anybody else.
TMZ be
unusual. They be knowing.
Here's a tidbit on how they get their information. TMZ pays the ambulance drivers, the nurses, the custodians in the hospital. That's how they get their information. So this is how they knew. They have these people on retainer. This is how they knew that he had died. I think they already presented him being dead in the ambulance drive to the hospital. I think, I'm not sure, but that's how TMZ knows this stuff. So our connectors at TMZ had told us this, but we were not going with the story until we got more credible proof, particularly from CNN at that time, because we also had connectors at CNN. All right. So once the news came through, I was the news editor at Essence.com at the time. And so the assignment was, our office was maybe about 5-6 blocks from Times Square. So the assignment was go take some of the interns with you and talk to people in Times Square to get their immediate reactions. So we could get those quotes online. And so I went to one intern that was about maybe 4:45, 4:50 at the time in the afternoon. And I remember that because the interns worked from 9 to 5. I went to one intern and she said to me, "Oh, it's 4:50 and I'm done at 5 and I have plans tonight. So I'm not going to be able to go."
Plans?
And I remember that. And I was like, okay. And being a part of corporate, I can't force her because, we were really regimented in how we used our interns. So it really had to be her decision, and, in order to come. I said, okay, fine, no problem. I went to the other intern and I said, hey, can you come with me to Times Square? She had her pad and her recorder already in hand. Right. And so Mavis, I remember her name. And I don't remember the other girl's name. Put it like that. Mavis and I went out to Mavis Ball, and I went out to Times Square, and we got those names, and she did the reporting, and she helped me get the material release forms, which legally we had to get when we talked to someone. We had to get them to sign a release form because we also took photos, right, of these people, and there were people in tears. There were people who were watching the Jumbotron in Times Square of his videos and the emotion, and we captured it all. And we came back to the office, we wrote it all up, and we got it online within like an hour or two of him dying.
Wow.
That's reporting, that's journalism. And May this is she's moved on and done incredible things, but I remember her in the moment of doing that because she didn't let the time or something else stop her from getting this incredible opportunity to speak to people in what is a breaking news environment. And again, two different interns, two different mindsets, two different choices.
Yeah.
I don't remember the other girl's name.
Listen, that story will always stick with me.
right?
Because yes, work ethic is such an
Or I
important thing.
enforce either of them, but it's the decisions that you make in the moment that
Yes.
really will leave an imprint in the people who you work with. It's the
Mhm.
decisions to go the extra mile. It's the decision not to be so. It's all about me. It's my time, and I got something to do, and I can't. It's the decision to put the job first. Sometimes,
Yes. Mhm.
right? Oh, yeah, again, within reason, but
Yeah.
the decision to put your career first. It's a decision to make your boss's job easier. That
Yes.
makes you memorable, and that
Especially in a moment like that.
Mhm.
makes me want to help you in the long run, right? If
Yes.
she came to me and said, I need X, Y, and Z, I'd be happy to help her because
Mhm.
I knew in that moment she was about her business.
Right. She wanted this thing.
She
Yeah.
wanted this thing.
Shout out to Mavis.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have any specific examples of bad journalism that you've noticed throughout your career? I feel like that was
Uh,
an example of one.
Yeah.
uh,
But
Specific examples of bad journalism. Nothing I can think of off the top of my head. I just feel like, again, I think we've talked about it already. Some of these blogs, can be very over the top.
Mhm.
I think anything that talks about kids inappropriately, anything that talks about sexualizing women in an inappropriate way. Um, I just say to myself sometimes, why? Like, is it really necessary to put that out there like
Yeah.
that? Um, you know, I think when I think of bad journalism, I think of either people who are pushing themselves to be the news, pushing
Mhm.
themselves to be the celebrity unnecessarily so.
Yeah.
I think of people who don't take the time to do their homework and to
Mm.
really ask the important questions,
Yeah.
or just more introspective questions. I think of just, yeah, things that take advantage of children.
Mm.
I don't like seeing any of that. But unfortunately, those are the things that sometimes um, people are attracted to and they click on most, or
Yeah.
they're picking up most, or they're reading most. We live in a society that I think some of our values are really kind of all over the place, and
Whew.
we can't get back on track if we ever
Yeah.
were. But we
Yes.
can't get back
Mhm.
until we start making some better decisions
Yeah.
for us as a community, plain and simple. I mean, what's happening outside of the community happens outside the community,
Okay, that ain't
but
our business.
but there are some times that, and I'm sort of like a fly on the wall when it comes to social media. My accounts are what they are, but I look and I see everything.
Mhm.
And particularly on some of these other, like, Facebook is trying to be more careful with it, but
Yeah.
IG, TikTok, some of this stuff, I'm just like,
Mhm.
wow, that's
Mhm.
out there. I've seen stuff on Twitter. I'm like, there
Okay.
nobody is actually watching this. Nobody
Woo.
safeguarding this. Nobody, like, anybody could click on this and see this. I'm not able to see
Anybody.
this.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
you have to prepare yourself before getting on the topic.
yeah,
You could
yeah, you really do.
go far
Yeah.
off what you've ever seen before. So
Yeah.
Exactly.
that happens
Exactly.
every day.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But and then at times I think that there needs to be, just like the serious, there needs to be a space for the levity. There needs to be a space for the fun. There needs to be
Yes.
we need the balance. And
Yes.
so those outlets that do things like quizzes and,
Mm.
or tips, or cooking, or whatever the case may be, we need that. We need to
Yeah.
support those spaces too, because we can't just be all about the celebrity, or all about the news, or all about the
Yeah.
the music. There should be spaces for everything.
I agree.
So I just feel like, to me, the only bad journalism is if people lie. If
Mm.
people lie and people tell untruths, knowing that it's a
Yeah.
lie and an untruth. Yeah.
I love this conversation.
I do too.
So how did you learn to embrace failure, if you do? Or I know like embracing it is very hard sometimes, and I know
Yeah.
sometimes we like want to give up, and sometimes we do have a moment where we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think I have learned that. I wouldn't say that I have learned to embrace it. It's very hard, of course. I have a overachiever's mindset. So for me, failure looks differently. Failure is, again, I was just telling this story the other day. I remember being in third grade, and I think I got like an 85 on a test and started to cry. And the teacher came to me and said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Well, I got an 85." And he said, "Well, but that's good. That's like a B plus." And I said, "You don't understand. I can't go home with this grade. Like my household, this is an F.
Right.
This is an F."
Yeah.
So that's third grade. So that type of pressure, I've always felt, whether for good or not. But for me, failing, and it has happened. Of course, everybody's gone through failure. It's harder to accept. Doesn't feel great, but I will say that I try to learn from it. I will say that I try not to make the same mistakes twice. I will say that I at least have the wherewithal to take a step back and say, what did I do wrong? Rather than, oh, what did that person do wrong to me? That person didn't, the man is against me, and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
I take some time to say, how could I have done this better?
Yeah.
Okay, if I get another chance next time, I will do it better. Next time, this is what I have to do, right? One of the things I remember in college, being an English major, I had to take Shakespeare. It was a requirement.
Oh God.
That's exactly my sentiment, right? This mess. I was like, I don't get it, and I don't understand it. Romeo and Juliet was maybe the only Shakespearean play I had read, but this was like King Lear and all this other Henry the Eighth and all this, and I was just like, oh gosh. And so the first couple of weeks, maybe first 2 or 3 weeks in the class, we would get these pop quizzes. I did the reading, but I was failing. I was not. I was getting like 5 out of 10 on these quizzes, and I just didn't get it. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. But I knew about myself is that I'm a visual person. Visualization helps me. So what I did is I said to myself, I got to figure this out. I met with my professor. He was just like, I don't know what to tell you. And I was like, all right, fine. So I went to the library, and this tells you how old I am. At the time, they were VHS tapes of the.
We had them too. You good?
I still got some.
Okay. Do not feel old. Okay, we are VHS children out here.
I got VHS tapes of the plays that we were reading, and I read along with watching. So it's almost like reading the script in a way, as I was watching them act it out, and then it clicked, and then it started making sense. And when these pop quizzes were coming out, I was thinking of the scenes that I saw. And then it helped me to reinterpret and to answer the questions correctly. And I ended up, I think, getting at least an A or at least a B plus in that class. But I shifted. I knew that I wasn't doing well, and I had to figure out how to make this work.
For yourself,
went to the professor, didn't get any help, right? I could have stopped there and been like,
this is it.
This is it. But it's not up to the professor to necessarily help me. Yeah, should. Doesn't always happen, right? Life doesn't always work out that way. You got to figure out how to make it work for yourself.
That's
At
true.
the end of the day, I'm paying to be there. At the end of the day, it's my education. At the end of the day, it's my choice.
Right.
So I had to make the choice for myself to figure this out. And I did. So that's what I try to do with any failure. I'll look at it and say, okay, all right, I did that wrong. I have to make sure that I don't do it wrong again.
Yeah.
I'm constantly thinking. I'm very critical on myself, yes, but I'm also thinking if I said something that may have hurt someone's feelings, or if I said something that may have gone left, I'm internalizing that too, and I'm thinking, okay, next time I will try to be a little bit more discerning, a little bit more balanced in my interpretation. I never want anyone to be hurt by what I say, but I will say, being in the field that we are in, we're all about go, 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 right? At times.
Yes.
And sometimes, always, as someone who's managing people, sometimes I don't always think about how someone's internalizing it. So I tell my team all the time, if there's something that I've done or said, come and talk to me, because I may not know. And one thing that doesn't happen enough in corporate culture, we have these times, I'm sure you both know, where we do evaluations, right? Where your manager has to evaluate you on your performance. They're called performance reviews.
Yes.
Why isn't it ever that the employee is reviewing the manager? Why doesn't that ever happen?
And
I never understood it.
It should be happening.
And so I say to my team, when we're in this performance reviews, I say to them, we're going to earmark some time where I want you to evaluate me as your manager.
Right.
Tell me what I can do to be better. Otherwise, how am I being better?
Right, because it's like, are you being as supportive as you need to be? Are you, taking the time to make everyone feel like they're being heard? Like, people don't think about that. They just think, I'm the boss. I'm doing what I'm doing.
And every boss
what
that I've had, I frankly, can improve. We all can.
Okay.
Right? So I try to tell my team, is there something I can do to be better for you? Is there something I can do to be more supportive? Is there something, and then I try to internalize that and do better. Because if you're not progressing as an individual, you're staying stagnant. If you're staying stagnant, what happens with stagnant water? It starts to stink, starts to rot, starts to smell. Who wants to be in that space? You have to keep moving. You have to keep moving.
Gems.
Yeah.
You gotta come on with these Oprah level gems that you were giving us. Yes. All right. Real quick before we get to the next question, when you were talking about Shakespeare, it made me kind of think back to On a Different World, when Jada Pinkett Smith's character was trying to learn Shakespeare, and she literally had to like come up with her own way through hip hop to learn it. Yeah. I know for me, it was for AP English, it was Spark Notes.
Yeah.
Literally had to break it down for me.
And my English teacher, we watched Macbeth, so I don't remember like
that movie was so dry.
Like the way
I could not get into it.
I really understood, and we like did a lot of character analysis. And it's my senior year in high school, senior or junior. And I don't know how she got those types of videos that we watched, but they helped a lot. It was like interactive, like animated.
Oh,
okay. See, if I had that, I probably would have looked at the story a little differently.
That's right.
All I saw was boring ass white people.
Because otherwise, yes, that's what you get.
Yeah, Macbeth is very dramatic. I really like that play. So.
And there's actually, I think AMC is coming out with the Anne Boleyn story.
Now that story I love.
And I am sorry, I'm blanking on the actress. She's a Black actress who was in Queen and Slim and I can't remember that movie.
I think I saw the trailer for what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I feel like I saw that recently.
They are reinterpreting it to make it more multicultural. Again, this is just I think people are finally clicking with the idea that if you want to expose these alleged forms of great writing and great art of Old English to a new audience, to a different audience, you've got to connect the tissues, and people have got to see themselves in some of these roles. So it's just another way. I think I appreciate any art form that is more inclusive and is just more diverse and reinterprets, things to make it more about individual cultures. And a lot of that comes from, I always tell folks that being Black is not monolithic. We're not monolithic in thought, word, deed. Being Caribbean American has a very, 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 very different interpretation of being from, having your roots in the South, or having your roots in Midwest, or having your roots in California. There are a lot of things that, I don't know how to play spades.
Me neither.
We don't know how to play spades, honey. And all of our family is from here. We don't know.
It just you can't always put that blanket over all of us.
Right.
We can be very different, and sometimes being from different islands makes you even more different. So, you can needle it down at times, but there are certain things that, yes, we, as just being Black in America, you do understand what that's like. But if you really want to needle it down more and know more about people, you can't just say, what is being Black in America? You gotta ask the real sort of nitty-gritty questions and get you'll get a different answer every time.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. What is something that you wish you knew at our stage in regards to journalism and leadership?
Something I wish I knew. I will tell you. I think that younger folks are much more entrepreneurial. What you ladies are doing now with your own platform, and getting folks to speak to like-minded people is amazing. My sort of peer group, we're still in the mindset of corporate, get your job, get that check, get that every 2 weeks type of situation. We're getting it. Because we're in that weird sort of space where we grew up in the analog, but we also kind of grew up in the digital. So the Gen Xers of the world are we're very different in that regard, because we can fly in both lanes really well. And I think the thing that we are starting to do is to understand this entrepreneurial spirit more. I have had so many people tell me, you should start this, you should start that. And I'm like, yeah, but how am I going to pay this bills every month? And so I think what you guys are doing is you're saying, yes, the bills are there, but I'm going to do this anyway. And I think that is something I wish that I knew when I was younger, to have developed those platforms earlier, and develop my own voice. And, I got a little website here and there, but, it's nothing to compare to what you all are doing. And I think that's the difference. That's the difference between sort of my lane and what the younger folks are doing, is that you guys are taking your lead. You're not saying, well, we don't have a corporate sponsor, we don't have this, we don't have that. You're saying, we're going to do this, we'll get it along the way. And that is what I think is amazing.
Thank you so much for that.
Okay. So you served as diversity chair on Skidmore's Skidmore College's Alumni Association.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you explain how this role went for you and what changes you wanted to see in this position?
Yes. So one of the things going to Skidmore that I never saw when my 4 years there was a lot of alumni who passed the people who I knew personally. Alumni from 10 years before I got there, or 20 years before I got there. Never really saw them. Alumni of color, let me make that clear. Black alumni of color. Never really saw them come back. Never saw them on campus. Never had outreach. Didn't know what their experience was like, quite frankly. And so when I was invited to join the board, one of the things that I wanted to do was not only be a voice for alumni of color, but be a presence for the students who are currently there, who are then going to become alumni themselves. So they could then see that this is what we should be doing, right? So one of the things that, part of the requirement is to come up to campus for board meetings. I think we did it 2 or 3 times a year. But I made an effort, we would have some downtime, and I made an effort to either tweet out or say to, the administration, if you have a few students who are around, I'm going to be in the student center, and I'm just going to sit in the student center, and whoever wants to come by and say hi, they come by and say hi. I wanted to just be there as a presence, so that people would know that, yes, there's successful life after this college. I think that a lot of people get scared after college, and I know I didn't have a job. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know where I was going. And I wanted people to know that there's possibility, there's
Yeah.
successful possibility, but also that, why I'm here. I'm here because I want to know what's going on. I want to know what you
Right.
guys are feeling and what you're experiencing. I want to make sure that the things that we experienced and felt aren't still there 10 years later, 15 years later, that there's some progress being made. Now,
Yeah.
for being a voice for alumni, one of the things that alumni kept telling me is that they just didn't feel like Skidmore was doing enough outreach to them. They didn't feel like there was any connective tissue. Um,
Mm.
and so, that meant, okay, well, what events can we do to bring people back into the fold? What events
Right.
can we do to get people to start talking again? What events can we do to make sure that people knew that Skidmore was going to be there for them as alumni, and not just a place for fundraising or a place for, asking all the time. We're also a support system, and here's what we're giving back to alumni. And so
Yeah.
that was my mission in the time that I was there. Since I've left, Skidmore has not only reevaluated their um, mission statement and their scholastic mission to include, now there's a African American minor that's being developed. There are an additional, maybe I think there's an African American, 2 or 3 more professors as well who've been brought in.
Wow.
It's become a part of the um, systemic change.
Mm.
I think that they know that diversity is no longer an option; it's a requirement.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that the school in itself has adapted to that. There are a lot more work that can be done. Absolutely, there's always more work that can be done.
Of
But
course.
the experience that the students are having now, there, even though they still confront their own issues and problems with race, class, uh,
Yes.
gender, I think that it's different. I hope that it's better.
Mm.
And I hope that I was a part of making it better. That's all I ever wanted. I always said if I help one student, one alumni, then I felt like I've done my job. I
Yeah.
can't be asked more than that. But if I did more, great. But my job was to hopefully help at least one person feel like, yeah, this is the institution that I got a lot out of. That's why I did it. I
Yeah.
I, I had issues at Skidmore too. I had a really bad situation happen where somebody scrawled something on my door, um,
Mm.
that I will never forget, because I was the head resident at the time, right? And being in charge does that. You do have,
Yeah.
that sometimes. But I didn't let that experience dissuade me from knowing that I got so much out of that institution. I got some great and important relationships. I got my sense of self. I got my sense of leadership. I've got my development of my creative spirit, my ability to critically think, my
Yes.
exploration of thought and mind and wonder.
Mm-hmm.
I got so much from Skidmore. And so I just wanted to give back in a way that I thought was foundational and could hopefully help somebody else feel the same.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy how it always happens once you leave your institution that all the good things come. I know we're experiencing
Yes,
that right
the
now.
food is so much better now. I can't tell you so many times when we went to, the dining hall and got cereal for dinner.
Ah,
Um, Now they have like a whole garden that organic this, and I'm like, oh,
not a
God,
garden.
fancy, homegrown vegetables, and I'm like, okay, we got that can.
Oh,
Okay, whatever.
wow. Yeah, they always do that once you leave. But yeah,
Absolutely.
it's also interesting because I feel like something I've seen a lot more recently is folks talking about college not really being as important. Like they feel
Yeah,
like you can get your education outside of
yeah,
there, but I don't think people realize how much it helps us to develop our sense of
that's
self
right. That's
and
right.
like you said, critical thinking skills. That
So
is
important.
yes, it is
So
super important in
important.
so many different industries. And those are the things. Those are the important things that you got out of college.
Yeah.
People always want to focus on the money that's being spent, but it really is an experience that I feel like it helps you become a more well-rounded individual. So
Absolutely. And is college for everyone? No, it's not.
Right.
It's not for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Well, there are certain people who will be better at technical schools or just going straight into whatever industry. But I do feel that, particularly for our Black and Brown people, that it gives you, I always say to folks, I got those 4 letters after my name, and nobody can take that away from me. So at the end of the day, when I go into certain spaces, they're important. They're important because it allows the stakeholders to perk up and think, yeah. Like I remember encountering, I had an intern at Essence, and she said to me, the president of my college is in town. Can he come by? He wants to see where I'm working and blah blah blah. I said, sure. He came by, he wanted to meet me, and I said, sure, absolutely. I spoke to him, and he said, well, where did you go to college? And I said, oh, I went to Skidmore. And he was like, oh my God, that's an amazing school. How did you get there?
Ew.
Wow. Now, how did you get there?
Of course, he didn't think that was some sort of microaggressive way of speaking.
Right.
And I could have taken that and done many things with it. But I said to him, I applied like everybody else, except I'm the one who got in.
Period.
That part.
Yes.
Okay.
That's simple. But again, these things that we as Black people have to always navigate. And again, when they're said to us, typically in this day and age, not said with malicious mindset, but said with a uncultured ignorance.
Yes,
that
absolutely
has to be changed. Has to be changed because 9 times out of 10, I will say that some of these folks are not saying it from a racist, I'm gonna, kind of get you type of.
They literally just don't know.
I know. They just don't know. They're so ignorant because they either have never experienced Black people in certain ways or multifaceted Black people, or they just are uncultured. And so is it up to us to constantly teach? No, I wish it wasn't. I really wish it wasn't. But in these moments, we have to make a choice. Do we go off, or do we hopefully ensure that the next person doesn't have to have that said to them?
Exactly. Yep. Handle it in a classy way, kill them with the kindness, and give them a little education in there as well.
That's right.
Yes.
So I read that you interviewed Dr. Maya Angelou.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, I did.
Is there anything that, of course you learned stuff, but like is there a specific thing that you learned in that moment that you still carry with you?
Oh gosh, that was an amazing situation. I went to her home. She used to have a brownstone in Harlem, and we were doing a photo essay with her for Essence. And so part of what I did is I just extrapolated a bunch of different photos from her past. And we sat down and I went through the photos with her and I said, tell me about this moment. And that's what the story was. So there's a photo of her, oh gosh, it's from maybe early 50s, where she was a calypso dancer. And she's in this sort of like, I don't know, traditional African sort of feathery top and bikini, mind you, right?
Yes.
Feathery top and bottom. And she's in this sort of stance like this. And, she was a very tall woman. So she's thin and tall and beautiful. And I sat down with her and said, tell me about that moment. And just going through the imagery and going through the pictures, one thing I will say is that she was in her maybe mid 80s at the time. She was wearing an oxygen mask and she was unsteady. But the mind,
sharp,
super sharp. she knew exactly. I showed her black and white photos. She knew the colors she was wearing at the time, and she just went through each with such fervor and description and just specificity, and she just knew exactly the moments, and it was the thing that I think I would take away the most from that encounter is at the end, the photographer, producer, myself were there, and we all her assistant took a photo of us, and I think I had crouched down next to her, and she said to me, Miss Wilson, never kneel for anyone. Never kneel for anyone. Stand up strong, stand up tall. I was like, oh, yes, Miss Angela. Okay. Writing me a very lovely note that I still have framed, of thanks, because she appreciated the story that we did in essence, with her signature on it. So that's a prized possession. Just an incredible, just knowing her story. And one of the things I remember very well, and this is the day before like cell phones had phones that really were cameras that worked really well. So
gosh.
Pictures. But she had in her brownstone, she had a gilded cage with a bird that was in it. Gold cage, and the bird wasn't real. Just it was art. It was art, and I don't know if someone gave it to her or she had it made, but it, of course, you look at it, you're like, yeah,
right,
I get it.
yes, the cage bird. Oh my goodness, that's a beautiful story.
Art in the house, gorgeous pieces in the house, very warm home. She used to entertain a lot, and she was in the heart of Harlem, just right in Strawers Row. This beautiful brownstone.
Oh my goodness, that
Yeah.
is incredible. Okay, so we've come to our last question.
Okay.
Thank you. You've been wonderful this entire time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Do you have any pieces of advice for aspiring journalists?
Let's see. It's pieces of advice. Find someone whose work you really admire and study them. Outside of your own development, study what they do, study how they do it, study their own trajectory. If you can, reach out to them, and just let them know you're a fan from the side. You want nothing more. Find somebody whose career you really do want to emulate. Do it your own way, yes, right? But who's been successful, who you can say, yeah, I really do like their style. I really like the way of writing. I really love the way they interpret things. There was a writer who I worked with at Essence, who I just admire so much. Janine Amber. She's an incredible writer. The way she develops the story, the tone, it makes you feel like you close your eyes and you're there. So I will always, always, always give her credence as being one of the best journalists I've ever worked with. Charles Blow is a columnist for the New York Times, whose work I admire so much, because he just is able to, he's an opinion writer, but again, based in fact, and always, always tells the story the way it should be told, with the passion and an energy that is unmatched. There are just so many people who I've encountered and who I've worked with, or who I haven't encountered and worked with. April Ryan is someone who I remember I reached out to April when I was first trying to develop our stakehold at Essence with the White House. And April, who has been a White House correspondent for years, I reached out to her just for some advice, and she was so kind to offer it to me. And to this day and age, I will always be grateful to her for just taking the 10 minutes. She didn't have to. Just taking the 10, 15 minutes to talk to me about what this thing is, what it means, how you should navigate it, who you should talk to, that sort of thing. We don't do that enough.
Yeah.
We don't do that enough. We're always thinking, oh, well, this person's going out for my job. I can't talk to her. This person's got, this person just got a promotion. Why should I talk to him about that?
There's space for all of us.
There's space for all of us. Quite frankly, if you're good, there's space for all of us. It's that internalized, I guess, devil on our shoulder that tells us that we have to be toxic, we have to be one each other, we have to be the loudest voice in the room, we have to be maniacal and evil. And I've worked with some of those people, trust me. But I have also, on the other side, there are people who have been kind, there are people who have been supportive, there are people who have taken the time out. And that's why I say, if anybody approaches me and says, I want 10 minutes, I want 15 minutes, I want to talk to you about X, Y, Z, I don't have a place in my heart to say no, because I had people do that for me. I have people who still do that for me. So to me, I think the best piece of advice is to find that person who you admire and study them, but also understand that you will eventually be the person who is admired. And there's a responsibility in that. There's an image in my head always of the one hand in front and the one hand behind. We must always conduct ourselves in this way.
Yes.
Because I can't be where I am at if there wasn't someone pulling me from the front, and I can't help you all if I don't pull you from the back. That's the way it has to be for us. We don't have trust funds traditionally. We don't have, legacy traditionally. We don't have people who, my godmother is the head of producer. We don't always have that.
Right.
So we have to be front and back for each other. And if we don't do that, then we won't get any place. It's the people for me who drop and drop. Those are the people I don't respect. Those are the people who I don't rock with. Those are the people who I can't, quite frankly, see myself working with. It's the folks who really do think ahead and who aren't so manipulative where they feel like, oh, it's just about me. It's never about you. It's never about you. It has to be about the audience. It has to be about the brand. It has to be about bigger than you. Otherwise, you will fall into that trap. So the biggest piece of advice I can tell people is think about your future. Think about who you want to help along the way. Whether it's, even if it's just people on your same level, you can be a sounding board for each other. You can build a community for each other. And then identify the people who you think will help you. I've identified people who I thought, one in particular, and a former editor-in-chief of a major organization. I went to an event because I loved this brand so much, and I thought if I could just meet her, she would, maybe. And so I remember going to the event. I stayed afterwards. I stood online to speak to her. I spoke to her and I said, we have some mutual friends in common, and I would love if we could, if I could just maybe call you and talk to you for 10, 15 minutes about what I'm doing and maybe what I could do better. And she said to me, I said, if we could do, that's what I remember. I said, if we could do a coffee. She said to me, I don't do coffee. Never forgot it. She was like, maybe we could do a tea or something. I don't know. Maybe we could do a tea. And then she moved on to the next person. And I was like, okay, I got you. I got you. So it's not always going to be successful, right?
Yeah.
But I never forgot it. And so I never want to do that to someone else. I always say that I've had so many different bosses. I have had a lot of different managers. Some of them have been fantastic, some of them not so fantastic. But I learned from everybody. I learned what to do and I learned what not to do. Because I've had it done to me, And when you've been mistreated, you don't want to mistreat somebody else in the same realm. So that is my biggest takeaway. Be kind to one another. Be supportive of one another. This thing is hard enough as it is. this journalism, this media lane, it's super competitive. You got a lot of people who think they know what they're doing, and you have a lot of people and not that many jobs, right? So it's a
Yeah.
lot of scraping and scrapping to get to the one spot. But what you want to do is never, never, never lose your integrity. Never lose your integrity. If you lose your integrity, then what is the point? At the end of the day, never lose your integrity and be kind. Be kind to one another. The only time I will say that I am not kind is when you do something unkind to me.
Okay.
I'm not a
Then I
fool.
got to get you together.
Yes.
I'm not a fool. Do it once. I rarely give people second chances. That's the thing. I rarely get people second chances to do something unkind to me again.
Yes.
So go into it with eyes wide open, but start from a place of kindness, and then allow people to tell them who you are.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for coming onto our platform.
Super welcome. Yeah,
This has
no
been
problem.
amazing. I love this conversation. We learned so much. So can you just let the people know where they can find you on social media and all those things?
My unverified, I've been trying to get verified for years on Twitter. My unverified account it's so disrespectful.
Yeah.
It's Wendy L Wilson _ on Twitter. You can find me there. You can find me on IG. I don't really do much on IG, but if you want to find me on IG, it's Wendy News at IG. But really, the most part, I'm on Twitter. You can definitely reach out if anybody has questions. That's the best way to find me. It's Wendy L Wilson _ on Twitter. So, and then just come to BET.com. We are doing our best to give the most interesting pieces of content, from video to articles to everything in between. We have a commitment to this community. We have a commitment to making sure that we are purveyors of information, both entertainment, music, human interest, political, style, lifestyle. We do it all. And I don't think people always realize that you can get all of that at BET.com. But we do it all. We do the best that we can. And we are always striving to be better. But I think that we are doing an excellent job. We've got a really great team. And I really just try to make sure that the content is solid at the end of the day. And that we are doing, things that people want to see. Right now, we've got the Soul Train Awards that we're planning for this coming which will be so we hope people watch. We hope people engage with the content. We've done a lot of hard work to plan for it. And then next year, we are planning for some major big things. So just keep watching, keep coming back.
Yes.
I'm excited.
Awesome. I am too.
Yes.
Love you some BET.
Oh, yes. Thank you for tuning in. We will be back Monday. Until then, so be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Yes Black Girl. That's YASBLACKGIRL. And follow us on Instagram at Yes Black Girl Series. And follow Kiera and I at The Only Raya and Unique Genre on Instagram as well.
Yes. All right. That's it for today. Bye.